Tony, and today we're going to be making block number 7, the ghost for the Pixelated Halloween Quilt Along. I love this block so much. I know I say that for every single block, but I do. I love this block. So grab your block number 7 and let's get sewing. Block 7, the ghost. Step number 1, we want to take a look at the directions and just give it a once over. Of course, this is all of your before instructions. This is the stuff that you get for every single pattern in this quilt along. If you're making this as a standalone block, it tells you how much fabric you need. Skip down to step number 1. If you're making it as part of the quilt along, then we want to pull a black 2.5-inch strip and any additional pieces that are cut. So I've got that right here. And we also want the white and the black combined strip. So we've got that as well. So I've got those pulled. Once I pull those, now we need to cut these strips. Now, I've pulled this black one. So what I want to do is mark this off because it says don't cut that additional strip. So we're going to put a 0 right there. Now we have our combined strip, the white and the black combined strip. So we don't want to cut one of the 1.5-inch strips. So we want to take away one of those and take away one of those. So we only want to cut one white, one black, 2 dark gray for the 1.5-inch strips. All right, so let's take a look at them. Let me set these aside over there. And I'm just going to grab these in here. I'm not going to go over all of the actual cutting instructions. If you would like how to cut strips, all about the stripology rulers and things like that, take a look at block number 1 for this quilt along. You actually can take a look at the layout of the quilt along. I actually have it set up as a video library, little folder within my YouTube. So you can just go over and find block number 1, and I have all of the instructions of how to do all the cutting. So what I'm going to be doing in the meantime is I'm just going to go ahead and speed up the video. I'm going to cut all the strips that I need. After I finish cutting all the strips, then I will come back and we will chat about the next step, which is then cutting the 2.5-inch strips. Okay, and I'm realizing my camera moved. Close your eyes, I don't want to make you sick. I'm looking to see where the head mark is. Okay, there we go. All right, so then now I can speed up the camera. So how is everyone today? Now that we've got our strips cut out, we need to do our 2.5-inch strips. Now, it's important whenever you are cutting your 2.5-inch strips that you iron these first. And I don't think I've mentioned this in previous videos, and I'm remembering, oh, maybe I should have. If you are combining 1.5-inch strips, that nice loud steam. If you're combining 1.5-inch strips, you do not have to iron those first. You can just go ahead and sew those together. There we are. I was getting a little bit of a bump there. All right, perfect. But make sure that you iron all of your strips. And then it's just cutting the strips, cutting the pieces. So whenever you're cutting them, you have, of course, a couple of the options. You have my pixel templates from Martelli, you have the stripology ruler, or you have a standard ruler that you can use. These are all things that I talk about and I show in that first video that I mentioned earlier. So if you're not sure how to cut these pieces, we'll take a look at that one. Really quickly, I'm just going to show you this white one because... see what I've done if you haven't watched any of the other videos? I like to layer them and then cut through them. So by layering, I'm actually cutting 4 pieces instead of 2. Because whenever I cut my strips, I like to have them folded in half in order to cut them. So in this case, for our white, we need 10 4.5. Well, right there, there's 4, and there's 8. So, and of course, I'm not going to do another one because I only need 2 more, not 4, but and so on and so on. So it's just all about efficiency. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of the 2.5 inch strips, and then after I do that, page number 2, using the 1.5 inch strips, sew the right sides together for each of the following combinations. A white to a black to a gray, and a white to a dark gray. Well, that's what I'm going to be doing here. So I'm going to be sewing these 2 together and these 2 together. So I'm going to speed up the video. I'm going to finish cutting my 2.5 inch pieces, and then I'm going to head to the sewing machine where I'm going to sew those combined strips together, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to iron and how to cut them. We've got our combined strips. So now we're going to separate them and cut them in half. That is an important step because remember, I like to be efficient with all of my sewing. So I want to make sure that with the efficiency that we do 2 at a time. Especially whenever we are ironing our seams in the correct directions. So let's go ahead and iron these now. Okay, so we've got that. I can move that aside for temporary. And this. Now, when you're ironing your strips, you want to make sure that you're ironing them in opposite directions. So what does that mean? You notice how whenever I folded it in half, this one has the gray on top, this one has the white on top. So if I iron this straight out, don't forget to iron your seam first to lock that seam in to prevent it from stretching and moving. So you notice how my seam is now going up. So in this case, my seam is going towards the white. And then for this one, let's lock that seam in. This one is going up towards the gray. So I've got a half of the strip with the seam pointing to the white, and the other half, the seam pointing towards the gray. Now, with the way that I designed the patterns, remember, it is important that our seams are always going in opposite directions. And then that is how they lock in order to have those perfect points every single time. So let's go ahead and iron the second one, and then I'll put my ironing board away, and we will cut our strips. We will cut those pieces. We're basically going to be doing it exactly the same way as we did the 2.5 inch pieces, but I'm going to show you the close-up of the of nesting the seams to make it easy to identify. So when we get to that point of laying our pieces out, we already know what nesting those seams are and what to do with it. Okay, let's put that away. Alright, so let's do the white and the black first, because that is our small one that's already done. Whenever you lay it out, you want to make sure, pick a color that's going to be on the bottom, and this is going up. And we're going to take this next one and we're going to lay it right here. You notice how both of the whites are on top and both of the blacks are on the bottom. So we're going to line this up. I'm going to use my fingers to make sure that both of the seams are locked in. Now this is what I mean by nesting the seams. You see how this one is going to the right and this one is going to the left? Well, if I sew this together just like that, then you get a perfect point. So by locking those seams in, that's how you do it. And if we lock these seams in as we cut this, well, now we're getting a nice, straight, wonderful piece of fabric that is combined and cut and works. All right, so with the black and the white, I need 3 sets of 1.5. So whenever you're cutting, always square your ends up. And there's 1, 2, 3 sets. And that's it. And whenever I am laying my pieces out after I cut them, I like to separate them into 2 separate piles. The one pile here, everything's going to the right, it's going towards the black. And in this pile, everything's going to the left, it's going towards the white. It allows you to find the piece that you want easier as we're laying them out in that next step. So I'm going to go ahead and speed that video up, and I'm going to finish cutting the black and the gray combined and the white and the gray combined, and then we'll come back and I will show you the next step. Step number 4. All right, so step number 4, we're going to start laying this out. Now, as I lay my pieces out, I like to put them in a way so it's easy for me to reach and to get. So let me do those, and then that, and then those. Now, what I'm doing is laying them out in a way so it's easy for me to grab them and then move them right over here to the other area. That, and I've got that, and then that. Great, so everything's all laid out. So now I like to start with the bottom and work my way up. So I'm going to start with row number 9. I'm going to lay it out, we're going to talk about it, and then yeah, so row number 9. Oh wait, do I have any horizontal pieces? Yes! Oh no! Now, for this one, I say lay it out and then sew the horizontal pieces together. However, what I'm going to be doing is laying it out and then pinning it. Laying it out and then pinning it. It just makes it a lot easier in my brain for me to take care of it. And not a lot of people are going to have the space to lay the whole thing out anyways. So it just keeps it nicer. So we do have a horizontal piece. So I'm going to do that first. So I'm going to take that. Row number 7 is right here. So row number 7, the arrow goes to the right. So that means we're going to take that black and that gray piece with the seam pointing towards the gray. This piece right there. So because whenever I then sew this together, we want to make sure that all of our seams in row number 7 go to the right. And that's what I'm doing, just like this. So I'm going to quickly sew this, iron this, and then I'll come back and I will show you. Well, actually, you know what? No, I'm going to do that one off camera. Let's go ahead and keep laying our pieces out because that's row number 7. We're going to start with 9. All right, so starting with row number 9, that's our very first piece. Now remember, go back to the first page. This piece right here is this piece right here. So it's, remember, that's what it looks like. So it looks like this, and then we look right there. Oh, that's what that one is. So that must be this piece right here. So we're going to take this piece, and I'm going to put it right there, lay that out, and then I'm going to grab this piece here, and that's all I'm doing, is I'm grabbing the pieces that I need and laying them out. Now, the next piece, we have a situation where our seams need to go in opposite directions. This is a white and dark gray combined piece. I grabbed one where the seam is going towards the dark gray. So in this case, I need to go up towards the black for the dark gray and the black. The next piece is another combined piece, so I need it to go down. It's a black and gray, smaller piece, so it needs to go towards the gray. So in this case, I've got it going towards the gray, towards the black, towards the gray. So you see what I mean when I talk about the opposite directions? And then I need this piece, doesn't make a difference, I have no seams. And then the next one doesn't make a difference because it's not up against a seam, but the next one is. The next one, I need to go down towards that gray, just like that. And then I have a solid piece, and then I have another piece, and then this one's going towards the gray, so the next one I've got to go up towards the black, and then put my last piece there. And that's laying them all out. Now, whenever our next step now, we take a look at those arrows. Just like I talked about with that horizontal piece, it's important with the direction of the arrows. So in this case, the arrows are going towards the right. So I want to try to get everything with basically ironed that way, towards the right. The easiest way to do that, in my mind that I have done, is I take a right piece and I flip it up over that left piece, and then I pin that into place. And then what happens is whenever I sew this, I'm going to sew that and not move it. After I sew it, I'm immediately going to move it over to my ironing board and iron it. Because remember, if this is what's on top, that's the direction it's going to go. So the seam is going to point that way if that's the way that I iron it. And that's it. So you're taking that right piece over that left piece. Now in this case, I have interlocking. So I want to make sure that I nest those seams. Remember, keep nesting those seams. So get those nested in there nicely. I like to put a pin right there in that nested seam, and then put pins along the edges. And then to the right. Perfect. Now, the only other piece that we may have to worry about that I haven't talked about yet is the vertical combined pieces. So if you have two combined pieces that are together, so like this one is a horizontal combined piece. If you have two that are vertical, it's a little bit different. In fact, let me look and see. Oh, I've got one in the next one. Great. Okay, so I'm going to keep going, and then I'm going to start to lay out row number 8. And then I can show you that one. And then you have all of the information that you need in order to lay out and pin the entire block. There we are. To the right. There we go. Perfect. And there. And there. And we're going to move this down. And now row number 8. Okay. So row number 8. I'm going to put it up here so we can see it. So I've got that one. And then I've got one of those. I've got one of those. Uh-oh, you know what I forgot to do with my white pieces? So this is the Toscana line from Northcott. One of my favorite lines to pixel quilt with. It's just amazing fabric. The only issue with the Toscana line is it's hard to tell the difference between the right side and the wrong side. So after I cut it, I like to lay everything out for the white so that everything is in the correct direction. Because let's be honest, I know me. Tony is very absent-minded, and I tend to just grab things. Okay, it was just a one. Oh, it is this side is the right way. I tend to just grab things and not pay attention. And it's easy to tell, like, that is the wrong side of the gray. It's easy to tell that. But if it's not easy to tell, I'm going to be all absent-minded, and I'm going to grab the wrong one, and then it's going to be backwards in the quilt, and you may not notice it, but I would notice it, and I would know, and it wouldn't be good. So I like to fix that ahead of time. All right, so we've got that. And then one of those. All right, now here's the piece I was talking about, the two vertical piece. So it is a gray and a black. Now, row number 8, your seams are going to the left. So that means the arrow's to the left, so we want to make sure our seams point to the left. In this case, a gray and a black needs to point towards the gray. So that would be that piece right there. So you see how that's pointing towards the gray? So we've got that one, just like that. And our seam is already pointing in the correct direction, so we don't have to worry about that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video. I'm going to just go ahead and keep laying all these pieces out. I'm going to keep pinning them, and then after I get everything, all 9 rows laid out and pinned, I'll come back and we're going to show you how to sew them on the sewing machine. finish laying out your pieces and you pin them, 2, 3, 4, 5, you are going to have a few pieces left over. This is perfectly natural. This is perfectly fine. You're going to have some pieces left over. These are your singles, because remember we cut these in twos. So don't be afraid that you've not used a piece. You've used all your pieces. It's okay. So now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be efficient. I'm going to do all of my sewing all at once. So I'm going to turn around. This is row number 9, because remember I like to do these backwards. So I'm going to put this out, and we're going to sew this. Now whenever we sew these, we want to sew these with a scant 1/4 inch. If you're not sure what a scant 1/4 inch is, I have a video tutorial down below that talks about what a scant 1/4 inch is and why you want to use a scant 1/4 inch whenever you're sewing. It should be part of your standard sewing, sewing staple. So all we're doing is just sewing these. Now, after I finish sewing these, then I will separate them, and then I'll turn around and I'll just put them back where they belong on the cutting mat behind me, and I'll grab the next row. So for example, this is row number 8. Now, the biggest problem that I have whenever I chain piece, which is exactly what this is called, it's called chain piecing. If you're not sure what chain piecing is and you want the definitions, the math, all the things, I've got a video down below. It talks about chain piecing. But the problem that I normally do whenever I do chain piecing is I get distracted a lot. I don't know if you know this about me, I get distracted. And I'll forget to then separate. So I have to make a conscious effort after I sew that first piece to remove all of these. I also like using my chain piece separator from Gypsy Quilter. It's pretty cool. I like it a lot. It's a really great thing. So at this point, I'm going to speed up the video. All I'm going to be doing is sewing all of these. After I finish sewing all these, I'll come back and I will show you how we're going to iron them. What I do, so all I did, remember, is I took them from here, I put them in the sewing machine, I put them back over here. That is it. So I'm making sure that they're laying out just like they are, and I'm going to iron them just like this. So let's grab my Aliso iron, and we've got that. There we are, and I'm just ironing them up. Oh, before I go any farther, look at that perfect point. Look how nice that is. That's what you get when you nest those seams. I always like to look at those perfect points and go, yeah, look at that. I did that. Makes me happy. Makes me happy. Now, if it's not perfect, that's okay. No one's ever going to notice. It is totally fine. Okay, so I'm going to take all of these back again. Now, I'm looking, row number 9, the arrows go to the right. So I need to take my seams, make sure they go to the right, and then put them back. That's all I'm doing now, is I'm taking these pieces, I'm laying them out, I'm ironing them, I'm looking to see which way those seams point, and then I'm putting them back. And that's all I'm doing. So I'm going to speed up the video. We'll come back after I finish ironing all these, and then I'll show you how to pin the next pass. I call them passes whenever we go through and we do a pinning. So I'm going to show you how to pin that next pass. And then we will we'll come back and keep going. Keep working on this block. I love this block. All of our strips are ironed and everything's laid out. So now I'm going to show you the next pass. Now, whenever you laid the pieces out for the first pass, you may have noticed that there were a few lonely little pieces that were left alone, and now they're on the bottom. Well, you want to make sure to incorporate those for this pass, so you don't get like a really long piece of fabric and then a little piece of fabric on the end, just to keep the balance. So this is row number 4. Row number 4 has got one of those lonely little pieces that weren't combined. If you count the number of pieces row 4 has, there are 5 pieces. Meaning, if I were to sew together these 4 pieces, that one's going to be left alone like it is. So let me show you how I'm going to handle this. So row number 4, everything is to the left. So let's make sure that I lay this out. And, oh, yes. Man, I'm looking at row number 3 going, what did I do wrong? That's not right. It's right. It's right. All right, so there's row number 4. There's all the pieces laid out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this first piece right here, and I'm not going to combine it. I'm going to set that aside. And then I'm going to grab this next piece right here. So this is to the left. So I'm going to take my left piece over my right piece and pin it into place. Just like that. I'm going to take this left piece over the right piece and pin it into place. So make sure that you include those last pieces. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out is row number 5. Row number 5 needs to go to the right. So that is there, there, there. Row number 5 only has 3 pieces. That's it. Row number 5 only has 3 pieces. So whenever you get down to 2 pieces, or you can just put those 2 together. But when you get down to 3 pieces, the efficient way of putting the fabrics together is I take the left piece, flip it over, pin it. I take the right piece, flip it over, and pin it. And that's it. And then when I take it over to the sewing machine, I'm going to sew this side, and then I'm going to sew that side, and it's ready to go. So at this point, I'm going to go through, I'm going to finish pinning all of these, I'm going to sew them, I'm going to iron them, and then there's only one more pass to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and then finish it off again. I'm going to go ahead and pin it, sew it, iron it. I'm going to speed through all of that. And then we're going to come back to when I have just the rows left over, and I'm going to show you how we're going to sew those rows together. And we have our rows. So whenever we sew our rows together, I am going to take rows number 7 and 6 and show you what to do. All you want to do is take this row, flip it up over to that next row. The first thing we want to do is find our matching seams. So in this case, we have one right here. We want to make sure that those seams are nice and nested, just like we did whenever we were sewing these pieces together. Then I'm going to move along and find the next piece that is nesting, and that is right there. And then I'm going to keep going along the next piece. Oh, there is no more pieces in this one. So let's just double check. Nope, there's no more pieces that line up. So just these 2 right here. So now I'm going to go back in and add more pins. I'm going to add one on the end. And anytime there's a big open space like this, I'm going to put another pin in there. We don't want to have big open spaces. You can never have too many pins. And then what I want to do is I want to come all the way over here and pin this end right there. Because what I'm going to be doing is stretching this out a bit and making sure that everything lines up. So we want to line those edges up first, if with this big open area, and then go back through and pin seams. Now, anytime there's a seam, whether it's on the top or the bottom, so in this case, that pin that I just put in, there's a seam on the bottom. So anytime you see a seam, whether it's on the top or the bottom, put a pin in there. Because when you're sewing it, you don't want that seam to flip over as you're sewing it, or else it's going to add some extra bulk to your project. So you don't have to worry about that. And I've got a seam there, and then I've got a seam there. All right, let's make sure all the seams on that side, all the seams on that side. All right, and it's done. So that's all I'm going to be doing, is we're going to sew these rows together. I'm going to go ahead and pin all of these. I'm going to sew them, iron them. I'm going to keep on going until we have our final block, and then we'll do our block reveal. And that's block number 7. See? Isn't he cute? He's gonna go and he's gonna haunt you. I love the ghost. It's so cute. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it so, so much. Hopefully you learned how to make a Boo ghost block for our pixelated Halloween quilt along. Don't forget to like this video, follow my YouTube, as well as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, all the things. And don't forget about Twitch, where I stream live, and I also stream live here on YouTube. I post my schedules on Mondays, so make sure you take a look at my socials on Mondays, and you can see when you can catch me live if you want to just hang out and interact.